Yes. Thank you, my Lord. My Lord,
that person will have the time used in interrupting you deducted from the time allotted to them.
Well, I thought they should add that time to the affected party's delivery. Added to the lordships have received a lot of law in written form on this issue. So what I intend to do this morning, my Lord, is to ask a few simple questions, give some background, ask a few simple questions about this petition with a view to impressing your lordships the need to dismiss it wholly. My Lord, perhaps if I may start with some story about the background of the petition. In the heat of voting, when it became apparent that the biometric machines were not functioning properly, several people, including the President of the country at the time and now, made suggestions on air to the Electoral Commission asking that persons be allowed to vote without going through fingerprint verification. And he was not alone in making that suggestion. As I recall, there were some prominent chiefs from northern Ghana who made the same call. Now, in response to that call, Boatia Dacon made a bold statement to the effect, and it's a matter of testimony in this court, that the Electoral Commission, Boatia Dacon was the campaign manager for the first petitioner, that the Electoral Commission should be allowed a free hand to conduct elections, and that this is one of the freest elections that this country had witnessed. Be it as it may, my Lord, the Electoral Commission identified polling stations that had a problem. And for those that could not complete voting on that day, voting was, as it were, adjourned to the next day. Now, at the close of polls, when results started trickling in, MPP was in very jubilant mood indeed. In fact, Dr. Baumia stated in his evidence, is he under cross-examination or I can't remember now, but he said that they thought they were winning the election. He couldn't quite point out the basis of the supposition that they were winning, but subsequently when the results continued trickling in, the trend had changed. It had changed. It had changed. It had become clear by the next day, midday or so, that NDC President Mahama was winning the election. Now, by around midday or the 9th of December, NPP decided to do something. They issued a press statement. That press statement is attached to Exhibit NDC 42. 43, my Lord. And then, of course, I wrote a long letter to Electoral Commission and attached the press conference, making all manner of allegations as to why they thought the election was rigged. I would respectfully like to just go through a couple of those allegations. Then this is the attachment to the Exhibit 43. Paragraph 2 says, "It is obvious from the preponderance of evidence available to us that at all material times, the ruling National Democratic Congress, led by President John Mahama, conspired with certain EC staff in constituencies across the country to falsify election results and thereby abuse the mandate of the people of Ghana. This situation, if allowed to go unchallenged, will seriously damage the essence of the electoral process and largely democracy in Ghana. it continues to say that substantial discrepancies have been discovered from results from collation centers when compared with official tally figures from the EC. Another paragraph says that it was this planned systematic stealing of votes at the collation center that was thankfully discovered at the time in Dome, Pavenia. Now, my Lord, the nature of the allegations are really quite instructive in view of the subsequent petition that was brought to this court, because they differ in substantial measure from the basis of the earlier allegation made by the NPP that votes had been rigged, and fraudulently so, with conspiracy between EC and the president for the benefit of the presidency. Later on the same day, the NPP met under the auspices of Peace Council, the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission listened to them, examined pink sheets they brought, and came to the firm conclusion that the basis upon which they were asking the Electoral Commission to suspend the declaration of the results of presidential election were unfounded. And that same evening, Dr. Farijan proceeded to declare the results of the election. Now, the immediate prelude and aftermath of that declaration is common knowledge, and some of them are matters of pleadings here. Media men and other men were brutalized for supporting the declaration, and in fact, there was a certain measure of uncertainty and insecurity around the country. Now, be that as it may, according to Dr. Baumia, NPP decided to form a task force presided over by Dr. Baumia himself to investigate, as he said, complaints about irregularities which they claim have been occasioned during the election. Now, how did they do that? They assembled a number of gentlemen, obtained pay sheets, as many as they could get, according to them about 24,000, collected computers, sat in an office, and began a desk-bound exercise to find out irregularities, as they claim, on the face of pink sheets. Under cross-examination, there was no indication that there was a single polling agent in that group. And so that was how evidence was compiled to bring before your lordships this grand petition, as it were, to have votes annulled in order to make the first petitioner the president of this country and the second petitioner the vice president of this country. By Dr. Baumia's own admission, no polling agent was questioned about what they claimed they had found of the face of those pink sheets. In fact, it would appear that they just poured over paper and came out with novel propositions like duplicate serial numbers, in respect of which they want over 2 million votes of Ghanaians to be annulled. Now, based on that, the initial petition named about 4,000 plus polling stations, but Dr. Bamia's mandate appeared not to have ended there. Subsequently, it was amended, and same desk-bound exercise unearthed over 11,000 as they claim polling stations. In proof of their case in this court, the petitioners waved pink sheets at everybody. According to them, the evidence is on the face of the pink sheets. And coupled with Dr. Baumia's mantra, you and I were not there, the petitioners sought to limit discussion about this serious exercise to the face of the pink sheet. But he admitted himself during cross-examination that, he didn't ask polling station agents about the figures, about what he claimed discrepancies on the face of the pink sheets. But then, my Lord, you begin to ask very, very simple questions indeed. Were these polling agents not appointed as agents of the first petitioner in this election? Dr. Baumia and the first petitioner must have spent resources training these polling agents to protect their interests at the polling station level. They were actually trained by Electoral Commission as well. In fact, the polling agents themselves cannot honestly say that they were not aware of what they were supposed to perform on behalf of the petitioners. So surely, if there were any irregularities at those polling stations, of course, one would expect that from their training they would know how to report those irregularities. Did they, for instance, see ballot stuffing, which is an incident of overvoting? Did they observe anybody voting whose name was not on the register? Did they, for instance, observe anybody who voted more than once? Or, in fact, anybody voted without prior biometric verification? Well, did they notice even that the polling station where they went to perform their duty was not one of the polling stations that EC had provided a list of? Had they, for instance, been trained to look for duplicate serial numbers? And if they did they observe how those duplicate serial numbers were used to undermine the credibility of the elections? My Lord, and then the big question, if they observed any or all of these, what did they do? What did they do? Their training must have shown them that the law allows you to refuse to sign a pink sheet and give your reasons in writing why you refuse to sign them. And the law also allowed them to sign irregularity forms. These are basic training given to all polling agents. And you cannot help but ask a few other questions about this electoral system. Is there a reason, for instance, why the Constitution and our laws recognize the role of polling agents in our electoral practice? Now, even assuming that the polling agents were, as it were, exalted observers, as Dr. Baumia said, couldn't they have at least, as observers, noted in written form, in prescribed manner, what they observed as exalted observers? It does not make sense, my Lord, for the law to require that when you have a problem in respect of any process in the electoral chain, report it at the polling station. Because, of course, naturally, that's where the polling station register is. That's where the evidence is, and the presiding officer is there. The parties have a right to be there, and so that if there are any issues, my Lord, they are resolved at that level. So, for instance, my Lord, if somebody suggested that, we don't know how many ballots were issued, with biometric, it's a press of the knob. It will tell you that this number of people were verified to vote, and therefore that is the number that voted. Does it not make sense for the law to require to make complaints at that level? In short, my Lord, do these various tests prescribed by law and by practice serve any purpose within the context of our electoral laws? Shouldn't failure to take those steps have consequences and affect the probative value of any claim of electoral malpractice? Wouldn't they resort to these simple practical steps, noting irregularity, reporting in prescribed forms? Wouldn't that save your lordship difficulties of looking at pink sheets and trying to read what is stated on those pink sheets. Petitioners argue that the pink sheets are the primary source of information on election at the polling station. And therefore, once they have exhibited those pink sheets, they have presented prima facie case of irregularity if there is any found. In their case, mostly on the accounting portion of the pink sheet. And therefore, the burden now shifts to the respondents to rebut. So those pink sheets then become the irrefutable evidence, or perhaps the presumptuous evidence that there was irregularity. Effectively, what the petitioners are saying is that even on that pink sheet, your lordships should ignore the fact that their agents signed under the results. They would like your lordships to ignore the fact that those agents did not complain at all about any irregularity. And they would like your lordships to ignore the fact that the agents, as if they were not there, exalted observers, they did nothing. And they would like you to ignore the fact that no issue was raised at the constituency collation centers in prescribed manner. And they would like you to ignore the fact that they haven't brought before your lordship a single polling agent or evidence or affidavit to show that nothing or something happened at a particular polling station, and that there was no event that led to overvoting or all the other incidents. They were asking your lordships to just focus on the accounting portion of the pink sheet. Lord, I'll ask a few more questions. What is the effect of tallying results against the name of a candidate? For instance, that tally is the product of sorting publicly done, where rejected ballots are taken out, the spoiled ballots are taken out openly in the presence of everybody, including the polling agents of the petitioners. What is the effect of the polling agent's signature against those results? Dr. Baumia states that when polling agents sign pink sheets, they attest to irregularity on the face of the pink sheets. But really, if that were the case, why would the law provide prescribed methods of reporting irregularity? And what is the effect if a polling agent does not complain in prescribed form? If the petitioner's view of the evidence is on the face of the pink sheet, and you and I were not there, if this were to be the position, there will be no need for any party to appoint polling agents. We might as well sit back at our home, trusting that the Electoral Commission will perform their duty. And when they finish, we will collect pink sheets without reference to any incident at all at the polling stations. We'll lock ourselves in a room, point at figures on that pink sheet, and come to your lordships and say, and now the votes, the constitutionally exercised rights of individuals, because the evidence is on the face of the pink sheets. And my lord, you and I were not there. The failure, in fact, of the petitioner to allege any single incident apart from 5 affidavits fine that they have filed, any incident at the polling station that would have occasioned irregularity, lies at the heart of the first respondent's defense. Where is the burden of proof? Have they discharged that burden? Is that burden discharged merely by waving a pink sheet? what would have occasioned irregularity? What is the factual base of irregularity? Is that before your lordship? Respectfully, it is not. In overvoting, the witness himself admitted. Dr. Farijan says overvoting is caused by several things. Ballot stuffing, people whose names were not on the register allowing to vote, double voting, people being issued with more than one ballot. In his own testimony and cross-examination, Dr. Baumia said he did not receive any report, of any such incident. So how could overvoting have occurred when there is no reported incident of the event that would have led to it? When you see a figure on that pink sheet, that clearly must have been an error, unless you can point that figure to an event. And we should not belittle the exercise. It is about votes, constitutionally guaranteed rights of the individual to choose a leader once every 4 years in this country. Should it be limited to the face of the pink sheet? What about, why would you appoint polling agents if you can't bring them here to say that this man voted without biometric? Unknown polling stations. Now, it's a simple question. Where did you get a pink sheet from? Your polling agent that brought a pink sheet to you, based on which you are saying these polling stations were known. Who accredited those polling agents to those polling stations? Why did the polling agents not complain? Why couldn't they refuse to partake in it and lodge complaint in formal listing? So you begin to ask yourself, where are these irregularities coming from? Anyhow, you talk about list of polling stations. We still haven't seen that list as we sit here. Is it not? Is it not your responsibility to bring that polling station, the list to us, for us to see that, oh, is this one of them? Is that one of them? Serial numbers. This is an amazing proposition indeed. Very amazing that duplicate serial numbers on pink sheets constitutes irregularity without showing how that could have happened. When on the face of the pink sheet, they relate to different polling stations clearly identified by their names and polling station codes. Biometric verification. According to Dr. Siedun Ketia's testimony, it was NPP that insisted on no verification, no vote. So they must have definitely trained their agents to make sure that nobody voted without biometric verification. And then their agents went to, in fact, polling at different stations were adjourned so that persons who could not vote without verification could undertake the voting exercise. So when people voted at polling stations without prior biometric verification, where were your polling agents that you must have trained? According to the NPP, it was so fundamental to the outcome of the election, and yet their agents didn't complain. They say the evidence is on the face of the pink sheet by virtue of entries in column C3. Dr. Farijan said column C3 is supposed to be verification by use of Form 1C. Nobody was instructed to take Form 1C to the polling station. None was sent to the polling station. And in fact, he tried to go through the arithmetic that if you used those figures in C3, you would actually have a confused picture. And I recall when your Lordship Justice Barigbe asked Dr. Farijan that, are you saying that the column C could not be used effectively as a basis of accounting ballot account? His answer was yes, because it was even discovered that there were problems, not anybody's fault, but his fault, on the column C. So what were your voters, your polling agents doing? Absence of signatures. We have indicated a lot of law about that. I will not waste the course time going through it. Sufficient to say that the petitioners relied on the case of Morgan versus Simpson, in which certain ballots that were not stamped were refused validity. In the witness box, Dr. Farijan was asked the same question, and his view was that that may not necessarily lead to invalidation of those ballots, simply because you can look at those ballots and check to see whether or not they fall within the range of serial numbers of the ballots that were issued. And then you count the number of voters who voted. If the numbers tally, it means that even though the stamp was not on those ballot boards, the presiding officer may actually decide not to disqualify them. So the position is slightly different from ours. Anyhow, the UK hasn't got a constitution. Under our constitution, you need to marry the twin and perhaps conflicting rights. They are not actually rights. The first one is a positive right given to each voter, entrenched to vote. The second one is omission to perform a constitutional duty. Which one should your lordships enforce? I think that enforcement of the positive right, when it is shown that there was no malice and that there was no fraud, that positive right should be, as it were, enforced against omission by a presiding officer to sign. My Lord, I can't conclude my my short piece without saying a word for Electoral Commission and yes, my Lord, I'm sure I'll finish before then, my Lord, and Dr. Farijan. During cross-examination, I asked Dr. Farijan a simple question about comparing the 2012 election to previous elections. What was his view? He said that it was the most transparent election. And that is understandable because of the biometric register. The usual bloated register issues were no longer present. And in fact, that statement had corroboration in the sheer absence of complaints at the polling station level, which is the level at which the elections were effectively conducted. If there were problems in a closely fought election as this one, the polling station results, the entries into those polling stations would have indicated it. And in fact, most of us that attended the polling stations would go back to that day. Results were declared, people jubilated, people went, everybody went home. It was only in Domikwabena and a couple of spots that there were problems, and those were consideration collation centers. So that the evidence of the face of the pink sheet in the sheer absence of complaints should support Dr. Afarijan's position that this was the most transparent election this country has had. I leave your lordships with the statements that were this court made in Tenadi case and also in the Ahoma Cancer case. The constitutional right to vote is fundamental, it's inalienable, it's a God-given right. When somebody comes before your lordships and says that I've won election, not by vote cast, but seeking to annul votes, your lordships should scrutinize it. And we say that no case has been made for your lordships to disturb the status quo. President Mahama won the election, won fair and square. And we therefore ask your lordships to declare accordingly.